I do remember one time we were doing an outdoor show and there were a couple of like truck beds. I think the stage was on. It was all rather primitive then, facing one side of a stadium, and so there was seats. And the police continuously, with the Beatles and even with us and all the other acts, would underestimate the power of these girls, how crazy they would get. So they'd go, "Oh, we can handle anything," you know. And what happened? All the girls came running down onto the grass of the baseball pitch or whatever you call it, and they were running across the way we were on the stage. And suddenly cops were telling us, leave, run, go, go and get back in the cars. This is out of control. So we were running, jumped off and as I jumped off the truck bed that was the stage onto the grass, my glasses fell off, which had become somewhat sort of iconic. They were my Buddy Holly glasses, the black glasses. They fell off on the ground. I picked them up and ran over and eventually got in the car. I looked back and this girl had caught up to where my glasses had landed on the grass and was pulling the grass up and eating it.
What?
Dystopia tonight. Dystopia tonight.
Hi.
How are you, sir?
Welcome.
Very good, thank you. What a great little intro piece that is. Very cool.
Thank you. Yeah, we started this during the pandemic, and I just thought of grabbing a collection of everything I could that was happening at the time.
Yeah, it's like a collage of ridiculous stuff.
yeah, exactly. I'm like, everyone's going through some kind of dystopia, so we're just gonna mash it all together.
Yeah.
How are you doing, man? How are you holding up?
Very good, thanks. All
awesome.
Fine.
That's fantastic. I'm so glad that you're actually out and you're touring and stuff, because you're going to be at the Count Basie on the 17th.
I'm doing a very limited amount of it. I mean, to be honest, things that we didn't have to do. I at this point, I still think the safest thing is to stay home. So
I agree.
So, but yeah, there are some commitments we'd already made in areas that appear to be safe and sound and not full of idiots. So
we feel the same exact thing.
So we're doing those. But
that's good.
But some things we postponed and put off. I mean, there's a lot of things that I was talking to Elvis Costello the other day, and he was doing that thing in New York, and we and I were both kind of going, is this really a sensible thing to do? And in the end, of course, he was one of the people that was scheduled after the downpour,
right,
and the storm and all that. So he I haven't spoken to him since, but he didn't get on the show at all. So he was there in New York, ready for action. And I think it was in the middle of Barry Manilow that the whole thing ground to a halt.
Yeah, it did, which I felt bad for Barry Manilow, because it was like, I felt bad for everybody. They all came out to do it. I'm sure everybody was trepidatious.
Exactly. No, everyone had decided, let's do it. But I mean, in the end, it was intended to celebrate, we're all back and everything's fine. And unfortunately, we're not, and it isn't. But
no, I know. Yeah, it was a really
but
weird,
other than that,
thing to watch.
it was a great idea. And Clive Davis is brilliant and someone I very much admire and a great friend. So, I would have done anything for him, but I have to admit that by the time this gig rolled around, it was like, I don't know, But
what do you think of like because I know that like Eric Clapton's caught some heat recently, and I think Van Morrison, because they don't apparently believe in any of this. But I read an interview the other day that they were talking about Eric Clapton saying that like he's lost about 75% of his friends. They won't talk to him.
Yeah, I would talk to him. I still regard him as a friend. I haven't spoken to him lately. He's not a close friend, but I'm surprised. I'm surprised and disappointed by some of the things he has said.
Yeah, it's totally weird, man. Everybody's
Van Morrison, I kind of expected. Van Morrison, I hardly know at all, and apparently that's a good position to stay in. But,
yeah, exactly.
But Eric's a totally cool guy, and I was puzzled.
Yeah, I was shocked by that too. I think I love Eric Clapton, so it was kind of weird to hear all that kind of stuff. Man, maybe he'll shake out of it. Who knows? But that's awesome that you are doing some of the gigs and able to come out.
Yeah, no, we're looking forward. The gigs we are, and as I say, we're playing an area of the country with this little leg that seems to be, as I say, a very safe and sensible area.
And you were touring with another good friend of yours, Jeremy Clyde, and now he can't come with you on some of these gigs.
Yes, my understanding is that it's very hard for someone from overseas, even from an alleged ally like Great Britain to actually come into America now. It's not that they're officially not letting anyone in, but the whole process has become so slow and complicated.
Yeah.
That coming in on anything other than a US passport is very tricky. And to come in time for an immediate gig is impossible.
How did you guys wind up deciding to tour together?
Well, to be honest, it seemed kind of obvious. I mean, it's like, because, well, look at it this way. First of all, there were only 2 duos in the whole British invasion, if you think about it.
Yep.
And the similarities between the 2 of us were ridiculous.
Right.
In both cases, we were from London. We weren't from Liverpool or any, working class northern area, all from London. In each case, there was the tall, handsome one who sang the low part. The short, nerdy one wearing glasses sang the high part. That describes both duos.
Right.
And even odder in a way was that the lead singer in both bands had their name second.
Right.
So it's
right.
Weird. So anyway, Gordon sadly died, of course. And then when Chad died, retired and subsequently died, it was kind of, we looked at each other and went, well, it's kind of obvious, because that way we get to do a show where, he gets to sing Well Without Love and Nobody I Know and I Go to Pieces, and I get to sing Yesterday's Gone and Willow Weep for Me and all the, all the Chad and Jeremy hits. So it seemed kind of irresistible. Plus, we're both actors as well as musicians. Jeremy even more so than me. I was a child actor mostly, but we both enjoy being on stage, and we try to inject a little of what we fondly consider witty repartee into the show. So, it honestly seemed like the logical thing to do to us. So, we both do other stuff as well, but we do go out together, and it's fun.
That's awesome. That you can't beat that kind of friendship and compatibility either.
Yeah.
What you were talking about, the British invasion, you'd mentioned it. Did you guys at the time, because obviously it started with the Beatles, and then everybody kind of caught that wave out, right?
Yeah. Oh, I always say to people, it really was like 90% the Beatles and the 10% all the rest was put together, which is not to belittle the Rolling Stones, who are a very important band and whom I love dearly. But there's no question the people who kicked the door down and let us all creep in after them was the Beatles, for sure. And yes, England was full of great bands, all copying American music, which was the irony of the whole thing. That people forget to this day that until the Beatles started writing songs, which they turned out to do rather well, but they never sang an English song, I don't think, at all.
Right.
Everything was American. And the whole operation was based on our admiration for American bands and American music. In our case, particularly as a duo, let us not fail to pay tribute to Don Everly, who died yesterday, I guess. Yeah. And because, of course, the Rolling Stones may have wanted to be, Jimmy Reed, whoever they wanted to be. Yeah. But there's no question we wanted to be the Everly Brothers.
Right. And that was that something that you guys were like aware of as you were all coming over, that there was like, this is the goal, this is what we need to do, we need to follow the Beatles? And were you all kind of like...
No, it wasn't the goal, but we realized that suddenly we could. I mean, because the other thing people forget is that before that, there were no British hit records in America.
Wow.
I mean, virtually none. You look at the years preceding the Beatles, Lonnie Donegan had a hit with Rock Island Line, only to follow it with the much more ghastly Does Your Chewing Gum Lose Its Flavor on the Bedpost Overnight, which was a bigger hit than Rock Island Line, which is a Leadbelly song. And Akka Bilk. Anyone remember Akka Bilk?
No, I don't think I know that.
It was an instrumental called Stranger on the Shore, and it was #1.
Oh, I know. Yeah, wow. I know that, Stranger on the Shore. Yeah,
that was him, and that was a British hit. But generally, there were hits in England that were mostly British acts covering American songs. But the idea of having a hit in America was wholly impossible. I mean, it was like, it'd be like suddenly an Afghanistan act having a #1 record in America. It would, it wasn't going to happen, and suddenly the Beatles made it happen.
Wow, that's incredible! I didn't realize it was that kind of a thing. Were you all friendly with each other at the time, or did you kind of get here and then realize it's become like a thing? And you
mean with the other British bands?
Yeah.
Well, yes. I mean, I was friendly with the Beatles, that in particular, but I think once you had a record deal and you started doing some of the TV shows that we all did, the same shows.
Yes.
Promotional shows that everyone did. And eventually the same applied to America, where you'd come and do Shindig and Hullabaloo and you'd meet other bands. But in England, yeah, you'd do Top of the Pops and Thank You Lucky Stars and all that. And you'd meet the other bands. Some of them already knew each other, like the Liverpool bands knew each other to a considerable extent. The Manchester bands knew each other to a considerable extent from working the same circuit.
So was it almost like
we
you
didn't
guys
really know most of those people. We were very London based, and there was a lot less bands in London, I suppose, except the Stones. And I didn't, I was a big Rolling Stones fan. I used to go and see them once a week when they were doing a residency in a blues club. But I didn't know them until much later on.
So was it almost like in reverse, where like you guys started out there, had to come out here, get really big, and then you could kind of tour like wherever you wanted?
No, we were beginning. I mean, the record, we were lucky. Our very first record went to #1 in the UK. So we were stars in the UK right away.
When did you start, like, you forged your friendship with the Beatles, and I know you went on tour with them in like '66.
We only toured with them briefly. We did a 1-week tour of Germany or something. That's the only time we actually toured with them.
Yeah, did that come about naturally? Like you were already friends with them beforehand, and then you guys decided to go
we
on
were
tour?
friends. We were friends beforehand. Yes.
How did you wind up hooking up with with the Beatles?
Well, that's a slightly more complicated story, which you may or may not know. But my sister ended up being friends with Paul McCartney for a while. They went out together for a couple of years, and Paul for several years actually. And Paul ended up moving into our house, into the guest room, lived with us for 2 years. So that's how I got to know him. And I met the rest of the Beatles through him.
And through that way, and then you guys forged like a friendship. That's cool. What was it like being on tour with them? Was it kind of at the height of that whole thing, right? Did you feel any kind of like was it all just fun, or were you like, there's a lot of pressure?
Oh, it was fun. I mean, it was, getting to watch them on stage every night was exciting. Being on stage and singing and looking over in the wings and seeing one of them watching was intimidating, but it was all fun. When we were in Germany, we traveled on this amazing private train that had been built for heads of state, and each of the Beatles had a private bedroom on the train. It was all very exciting.
People
and of course nobody could hear much. You got to remember technologically how primitive it was then. Monitors hadn't been invented. PAs, you used whatever was at the gig. Nobody traveled with a proper PA system. So it was a good thing they were all screaming, and the shows were only about half an hour long because you couldn't hear a note, and there was just no provision for anyone doing so.
Was that something that bothered you guys the same way it bothered them? Yeah, it was.
Yes, it was, very much so. We were aware that it'd be nice if you could go to a concert and actually hear the music.
Wow.
When in classical music you could because everyone was shut up. But the point about an orchestra is that you don't need a PA. It's loud enough to hear in a normal concert hall anyway. But the minute you start to talk stadiums and screaming girls and rock and roll, it became a completely inaudible mixture.
Was this something that you always, kind of going back a little bit, was like music something you always wanted to pursue, like when you were younger? Like what was that?
Well, my mother was a professional musician.
Wow.
She was an oboe player. She was an oboe professor at the Royal Academy of Music in London. So I grew up in a very classical background, but yes, music was, and my father was a big music fan and amateur pianist and a Gilbert Sullivan obsessed person and so on. So music was always part of my life. And then, when I discovered rock and roll and folk music and everything, I was a big jazz fan too, but I never presumed to think that I could ever play that stuff because you have to actually practice for hours and stuff.
Right. Did you ever try?
What?
Did you ever try to do it?
Yeah. Well, I was in a Dixieland jazz band playing bass for a little while, playing bass very badly. But that was what we used to call trad jazz, traditional Dixieland jazz, which is pretty easy.
Right.
But the music I loved was bebop, and that's the most complicated music in the world.
Oh, that's fascinating. That's how old were you when you did the Dixieland? Were you young? Like
17, 16, I suppose.
Wow.
Yeah, interestingly, the band leader was a guy called Adrian Lyne, who you may or might not know as a successful film director.
Yes. Oh my God. That's
he played trumpet and led the band.
Oh my goodness. That's incredible. Did you guys wind up keeping in touch as you went on your separate ways? Yes. Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, we did and we have. Although I haven't seen him for a couple of years, but I I should email him after this conversation.
I'm glad I could help with that. Tell him I said hi.
See what he's up to.
So what was your writing process like when you were younger and getting into the, like, you know, having to go on tour and stuff like that too? Was it the music first? Was the lyrics first? What was your process?
We didn't write our own hits, unfortunately. We wrote songs, but we never succeeded in writing a hit. But yeah, we Gordon and I wrote together, and we wrote music and lyrics pretty much at the same time. I think it was one of those.
Wow.
You know, it would vary. In other words, sometimes someone would have a lyrical line as a suggestion, but you know, the lyrics were pretty basic and cheesy in that era. You know, and it was a gradual process by which people started to write more literate lyrics. But you know, there was an awful lot of "I love you, baby," you know, and Moon and June. And
well, I'm sure that helped with dating and the girls and stuff like that back in the day.
Oh, it did. That's one of the reasons we took up. Took up guitar in the first place. Probably me more so than Gordon, only because Gordon was, you know, a handsome lady killer type guy, extremely self-confident and all that.
Right.
But if you're the slightly shorter, you know, relying on trying to be charming and funny rather than looking like Elvis.
I get it. I think we're the same height, so I totally get it.
Yeah, and so yeah, you having being able to play the guitar a bit helped.
When did you learn to play the guitar?
Gordon, you know, I'd learned a few chords. Gordon used some more chords, and we just sort of figured it out gradually. I'm still only basic, you know, folk level rhythm guitar player, but I learned enough chords to play all the songs I wanted to play.
I always found that kind of interesting because it feels like all my heroes too, but like any kind of you know, like, you know, rock musicians or whatever didn't have any formal training or they don't know how to, you know, read or write music.
Many don't. Yeah. We all learn guitar. There's a guy called Bert Whedon, who is a little recognized figure in British rock and roll because he had a guitar teaching book and method that almost everybody learned from. I know McCartney did. I know I did. I know Hank Marvin, who you may or may not know about, who's a big British guitar hero. He was the lead guitar player of the Shadows, not well known in America. We all tried to play, but he learned from Bert Whedon. It was How to Play in a Day or something, I think was the name of the book or something like that. I've got it somewhere. And a lot of us learned from that book and from that later on from a video that he made.
That's incredible. Did you ever get to play with the Shadows?
No, I met them, but I didn't get to play with them. No. You know, they were Cliff Richard's backup band, and Cliff Richard was, you know, a huge star in the UK and still is.
Oh, that's incredible.
He was like our Elvis.
Wow. Yeah, are you comfortable meeting? I mean, at this point, you play with the Beatles and stuff like that. But when you were younger and you were starting out too, was there anybody that ever?
I've never played with the Beatles. I mean,
you went on tour with them. Yeah. Like you were with them. Or whatever.
I'm not over-claiming here. I would love to.
I will overclaim for you.
Very exactly. Oh, I played with them a lot. No, somebody said to me all that time Paul was living in next door to you in the same house. You know, you never wrote any songs together. I went, no, I wish.
Wow. That's what I was gonna ask. I was gonna ask if World Without Love, you guys collaborated at all on it. If you got to throw in some lines or something.
No, I think he had an alternate collaborator who was a little better.
You know, I'm not familiar with him. Can you just?
Yeah, exactly.
That's incredible. Yeah. Was there anybody that you were ever intimidated meeting, like for the first time, or like performing, like?
Oh, well, yes. I think all of them. I mean, you know, I've had the pleasure of producing a lot of people who I was intimidated by. I mean,
Linda Ronstadt. I mean, James Taylor. The list. Yeah. I was looking at the list, and it just goes on and on. Bonnie Raitt, Cher, 10,000 Maniacs, Diana Ross, Neil Diamond.
Now you see, well, there you go. Cher and Diana could each be a little bit intimidating.
Yeah.
Diana, you know, you hear all those stories about, you know, call me Miss Ross or whatever, and I knew her a bit socially. We hung out together before, but not at any length. So the very first day in the studio, you do kind of go, this is scary. But she's wonderful, and she was charming and helpful. And, you know, she's the kind of person, same as Cher, where you wouldn't want to not have done your homework. Right. You wouldn't want to not be ready, you know. But if you're ready and you know what you're doing. And I remember, I mean, someone like Diana, I mean, I've had the luxury, this is a bit of a digression, but I've had the luxury, obviously, of producing a number of singers, for some reason, mostly girl singers, who are unique. You know, the thing they have in common is that in about 4 bars or less, you know exactly who's singing. When you hear Cher singing, or Linda singing, or Natalie Merchant singing, or Diana singing, you know. And I remember doing the first session with Diana. You know, I worked on the track and had the arrangement done and all that stuff. But I can't remember what the song it was, but she goes out to the mic and sings, you know, and you kind of go, holy shit, she sounds exactly like Diana Ross. You know? And you think back to all your Supremes records, you know, and your Baby Love or Stop in the Name of Love. And
wow,
she sounds, you know, boy, it really sounds like her. It's amazing. And of course, it's not amazing at all. It's to be expected, but it's intimidating nonetheless.
That's incredible. And you also one of James Taylor's biggest albums, Sweet Baby James, you produced.
Yeah, I produced most of those records. I did the bunch for Warner Brothers, and then he did a couple without me, and then I came back and did JT, the first album on CBS, which was a big success.
That's incredible. What was it like? And you produced and won a Grammy for Robin Williams' album in 2002.
I did, yes.
What made you want to do a comedy album?
Robin's was a dear friend, and we'd hung out together a lot. And we started talking about the fact he wanted to make a live record, and essentially we were talking about how to make, because it was an interesting period of time, and this again is a bit of a digression. Comedy records went through a change, because if you remember, comedy records used to be huge.
Yes.
Bill Cosby, Bob Newhart,
Steve Martin,
millions of records were sold, you know. And they were usually like the Bill Cosby ones, just live gigs.
Yeah.
So what happened, of course, is once DVDs came in, it was like, why would I want, you know, it's like the company's offering you a choice. You can have 1 hour of comedy without pictures, you know, for $15, whatever it was. Or if you like, we can give you 2 hours with pictures for an extra $1. It's like, well, it makes no sense logically. I mean, we can explain, but it's insane. You want pictures as well? Oh, then you can have it twice as long. But so in other words, that's why comedy albums stopped selling, is because people would buy the DVD. So we were talking about this tour Robin was going to do, and there was going to be a DVD shot of the New York show, which was the end of the tour. And so I started talking about how we could make it different. We could record every night and choose all the best bits, and change things around a bit, put things together. And also Robin would do each night, the first 10 minutes of the show would be about the city we were in. The minute we got off the plane, he'd be asking, you know, the limo driver and the baggage guy and you know, what's going on in town, what's the mayor up to, what's the sports team action, blah blah blah. And by the time we got to the show, he'd have written in his head an entire monologue about the town. So we recorded all those, and so on. So anyway, as we were talking about how can we make this different than the DVD, how can we make this interesting and better in some respects than the DVD, given the fact that we don't have you being funny in pictures. And by the time I started explaining all this, he said, you should, you know, he asked me if I would produce the record, which essentially meant recording every night, making notes as to which were the really cool versions of which bits, which new bits, because he freewheels a lot, as you know, which new bits were great each night, and putting it all together, because I don't think he'd have the patience to do the editing part. He'd be long gone on something else. So that's what, and he said, you want to produce the record? And he and his wife at the time, Marsha Williams, who were great friends, and Marsha was involved as well, who's brilliant at it. So I said yes, and that's how we ended up getting a Grammy for Comedy Album of the Year. Not one I ever expected, I have to admit.
Yeah, that's incredible. I'm a huge Robin Williams fan. One of my first albums was his '86 special Live at the Met.
Right.
And this I got when I knew he was coming out with another CD. I got it immediately, and it blew me away, because exactly that. You guys had put together such a unique package, and I just remember crying laughing at each city he went to, each different riff that you guys collaborated on and put together. It's just a beautiful album.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I haven't heard one quite as unique and quite like that since. It's
thank you. Yeah, no, actually, it was nice that we got the Grammy, because I felt we kind of deserved it.
Yeah.
Even though I bet some of the people who voted for it were thinking about the TV special. But that's fine.
It's funny because
take it any way it comes.
Yeah, I actually like it better than the TV special. And I remember listening to the album going, I actually wished I could see, you know, like what was on this album actually on TV. So it was crazy.
Well, you're a man of impeccable taste. Thank you.
Well, we're gonna end the interview there. No, I'm just kidding. That is. Did you find that more difficult to kind of edit and go through that kind of process because of the kind of material and what you had to be selective about than music, or do you think the music is more difficult?
Oh, that's a hard one. That's an interesting one. Well, you never really get presented. I've never done a live album where I had 3 weeks of shows to choose from other than this one. So, yeah, I mean, it's probably harder than music because when I was making choices for a live music album or a music video, you can make, this was a better performance, this was more in tune or whatever, this was a better tempo or whatever it is. But with Robin, you kept having to scribble down, this is where he goes on the crazy bit about whatever, so because it would be like doing a music show, but every night they were doing different songs, so or different. Suddenly, like one song would last twice as long one night or something, stuff that doesn't happen with music does happen with comedy.
That's incredible. That's a
great... I would say that was harder.
You were on the road with him for a little bit?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah. What was that experience like? Because I just imagine what that had to be like.
It was fantastic. I mean, as I say, Robin and I had become very good friends. So we'd hang out. We hung out together. We hung out together a lot, up until the end. I saw him about 3 weeks before he left us.
Wow.
That's incredible. That was one of those things. I mean, I can't, knowing him personally, obviously, is on a different level.
Yeah.
But I couldn't imagine somebody I didn't know personally or ever actually meet. I would have, done anything to met him at the time.
Yeah, he was.
When I started doing stand-up. But it affected everybody so much.
And he was brilliant. I mean, as you probably know, he was intellectually extraordinary.
Yeah,
very well read and so on.
Yeah, that's incredible. What led you into, because you have another album coming out with Cait Taylor. That's the new album, right?
Yeah, it's just out a couple of weeks ago. Well, we did an album. When I first met James, which is a whole other story. When I signed him to Apple Records and all that meant I met the whole family, obviously.
Right.
And I loved them all. They all sing and play, as you may know. There's, all the brothers sang and played brilliantly. Both parents are musical and so on. And I particularly admired the singing of his sister Cait. And having heard her sing, I thought she should make a record. I took her to Ahmed Ertegun, who's the head of Atlantic Records at the time, and he loved her too. So we signed her to Atlantic, and I made a record. And it was actually, and then what happened was the record came out, did quite well. We didn't have a hit single, but it sold quite a lot. And then as we were out promoting it and everything, and Cait was on the road, she decided she didn't like show business after all, that the rock and roll world was not for her, and she quit and went to live in a teepee on somebody's land on Martha's Vineyard.
Wow.
For a couple of years. And she did creep gradually back into singing because she sings so naturally. But somebody, she eventually did go back out on the road years later, but somebody pointed out to me that it was now the 50th anniversary of that album we'd done all those years ago. So we put together a song that did another album on that anniversary using some of the same musicians, people like Danny Korchmar and Leland Sklar and Russ Kunkel, legendary musicians who had played on that very first record as well.
That's unbelievable. What led you kind of into producing in the first? I mean, like, because you were on the road. What moment did you go, I think I want to be a producer? I think this is what I'm really good at.
I thought that the first time I was ever in a recording studio, when Peter and Gordon made their first single, I was enthralled by the process, the technology, the music, the fact you could hire musicians much better than yourself and tell them what to play. I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah.
I didn't have to practice after all. And so becoming a producer was a conscious decision on my part. I worked towards getting the right to produce records. And it's worth pointing out, of course, again, a huge difference between then and now, because now anyone can prove their worth as a producer by producing. You sit down with your laptop and you go, look at this groove and this beat and this song and this sound and this singing. Here's what I want to do.
Right.
And give me a project. But then, without a studio and musicians and a project and somebody to pay for it, you had no way other than just talking yourself up to convince people you should be a record producer. Because there was no, as I say, people forget that there was no connection between computers and music whatsoever.
Yeah.
That's why there could be two separate companies called Apple, because they were in completely separate worlds. No one imagined that a computer would be where not only where you stored music, where you made music and everything else. So that's otherwise those companies would have never been allowed to register their separate existence.
Do you think about the differences much between then and now? And do you feel like maybe, I don't want to say one was better than the other, because it's always, subjective in a sense, but like just the industry in general, how do you feel about the change it's come through?
That's a complicated question. I give you a very long answer, but technologically in the studio, I love all the changes. I mean, it doesn't mean that you give up any of the value of the older ways of doing things, but it means that now we can do things we dreamt of back then.
Mm-hmm.
There's all kinds of times. I wish we could fix that. If only we could use that take, but just fix that one note. Things that we couldn't do,
right?
Or couldn't do easily.
I was fascinated.
Now
by
you can do so much. I love it. It's
Yeah.
brilliant. But yes, do people sometimes take advantage of the new technology to not bother to get things right?
Yeah.
Yes, they do, and that's a mistake.
I was fascinated by the Rick. I don't know if you saw the Rick Rubin documentary.
I haven't yet. I keep meaning to, and everyone keeps asking me. Maybe it's easier that I can go, no, I haven't seen it.
You can watch it and not tell anybody.
I like Paul and I like Rick, and I should see it.
Yeah. The coolest thing about it was that I had never seen anything like it. It was cool to see them working with the soundboard.
Yeah.
I'd never seen that before.
And that relates to the fact that it was all on 4-track and things like that.
Right. Yeah. And it was incredible to see two people kind of, because the process that people go through is the most interesting thing too, because love the music, love the songs and stuff, and seeing everybody live, but seeing how it's made is like, it's a whole other world.
Yeah. And it's interesting now too. I mean, you watch the one, the Billie Eilish little documentary. My favorite bit is her and Phineas talking about how they did stuff. Completely different technology, but the same process essentially.
Yeah. It's all kind of it all goes through like a creative digestive feed basically, and it comes out at the end when it's good.
Yeah.
Do you still enjoy like performing live at the moment, or is it kind of weird for because I know we were talking a little bit about like places being safe and stuff like that or whatever, but did you find yourself going a little crazy during the lockdown and stuff when you couldn't get out there to do it, or
Not
did you
really.
find another means to do it?
No,
that's good.
It was fine, and I live in Malibu on the beach. There are worse places to be, and whatever else they can stop you doing, they can't stop you. Sitting on your deck watching the waves and drinking a gin and tonic. So it's like I can live with this. That's
a very I feel like that's a real honest answer, because I feel like some people come on and they're like, oh man, it's been really rough, and I'm like, I've
talked to friends in New York. If you lived in a New York
in New York,
where you're scared to go in the elevator, you can't get in and out easily. Even if you do get out, you're walking down the street with a million other people. It's I can see it being
New York is bad.
A real city like New York or London, it could be quite restricting. But certainly where we are, I mean, if we didn't leave the house for a few days, as I say, you're never trapped, really.
Right. Yeah. No, I didn't feel. I mean, I got a lot of. I never thought I'd be sitting at a desk, but I got a lot. I missed the road a little bit, but you adapted and you moved on from that.
Yeah, it doesn't mean I didn't look forward to working, but was I continually going, oh no, I'm trapped? No.
I mean, the road's kind of interesting, and I'm gonna come see you at Count Basie, by the way. So I can.
Oh, great! Good, thank you.
I'm looking forward to that. That's gonna be awesome. But is there any place in particular that you like absolutely love performing? Can't wait to get back to that kind of a theater or a city?
Not a specific one, I don't think. I mean, there's some particular gigs that are cool to do. There's a place called the MIM, the Musical Instrument Museum in Phoenix, which is one of my favorite little theaters. It's an extraordinary place, the whole museum. And they've got just this beautiful few hundred seat theater with amazing sound and lights and a 9-foot Steinway and all this cool stuff. It's
Right.
but you know, that's just picking one at random out of my recollections. But but in terms of cities, you know, playing New York is always special and a little bit scary, and
Yeah.
the audiences are a little bit more prove
Yeah.
it, you know.
Yeah.
So that's exciting, and then playing home in LA is always fun, you know. So they're all different, both
Yeah.
both physically and audiensely.
How much control does a producer have over like a performance, like how somebody sings? Like do you ever, you know,
It varies enormously. You know, it depends on the artist and how much input they want, how much input they accept, and it also changes in the course of an artist's career. At the beginning, they're much more likely to want suggestions. At the end, you know, as a producer, you're lucky if you're still employed. You know, they probably think they can do it all by themselves.
Yeah,
and sometimes they can, sometimes they can't. But my point being, the power balance, obviously. If you look at the Beatles, you know, when they were first signed, George Martin was a god. By the time, you know, by the end, he was a friend helping them out. You know,
right.
Yeah.
Do you find it like is there a huge difference between stylists and vocalists in terms of when you're producing them? You know what I mean? Like a Bob Dylan would be like more of a stylist. He's got a particular thing, and then you've got the power ballad people who, you know, can sing anything. Do you find one in particular different than the other?
I've been lucky. I've generally only produced people who can sing. In other words, I've never produced Bob Dylan.
Yeah, I know. I was just thinking. I was like, oh, a stylist, that'd be interesting. Yeah, that's true.
Stylist is polite, but it makes him sound a bit like a hairdresser. But
I didn't know what else to call it.
So. No, exactly. No, I mean, if you think about it, miraculously, which James, Linda, Diana, as you say, and all those people, they really can sing. So yes, one may help them elicit and choose the best performance.
Right.
I mean, the album I'm starting now that we're doing pre-production now. I'm doing a record with Susanna Hoffs, who's singing I've always loved with the Bangles, and her voice is extraordinary, and she's singing better than ever. So we started on some work on that, and again, it's so easy because she's a fantastically good singer.
Yeah, she is. I've been following her. That sounds creepy. I've been following her on Instagram. It's always a weird when you're talking about social media. But she's been posting, you know, videos during the pandemic and stuff, kind of like everybody else does, and her voice still sounds amazing.
Well, we did this thing for CNN, you know, for their what do you call it, 4th of July thing. We did new versions, new arrangements, reimaginings of Manic Monday and Eternal Flame. And that was really fun. And she did that live. And if you listen to it, the singing is impeccable.
Yeah, and I watched that. It was awesome. And what about like the inflection of a singer on certain words and stuff? Because I always wonder when you're listening to an album, you know, is it more like they're singing in the moment and you're like, oh, I'd never heard it quite like that before. Let's leave it in. Or you're like, we got to go back. I don't think they.
Both. Again, unfortunately, all those things have happened, you know, so at one time or another. So sometimes there'll be a particular moment the singer themselves will do something differently. Someone like Diana actually sings it different every time.
Right.
And you kind of go, ooh, that's a new cool way to do it. Sometimes in Linda's case, she'll actually ask for input on, you know, what do you think is best to do it this way or this way? And consciously choose one or the other. So it varies very much from singer to singer.
I'm always sorry.
You know, like everything between producer and artist, it's always a consultation. It's a discussion. Unless you're, you know, Phil Spector or that school of production where everyone is essentially a session musician, whether even if they're the named artist, and you tell them how to do it, and the record is your record. Using great singers, but he generally, as I understand it, would be quite rigorous about this is how I want to do it. I've never been that kind of producer. I've always been let's sit down and figure out how we can do this and make the song. And then in the rest of my job, as I see it, is framing that vocal, you know, in the best possible way to make it sound as good as it can be, which means putting the right things in there and leaving the wrong things off, even more importantly. so you don't automatically clutter the track up. One of the things I like about a lot of the modern top 40 records is how spare they are. That they'll get like one little piano sound and fix it, so it's so interesting that you don't need anything else.
Right.
I love that.
Have you ever thought about going back to something you'd produced and trying to do it in a different way? Have you ever looked back on it like, oh, what if we did it like this? Or
Yes, but usually that's a mistake, because if the record was successful, people want to hear the one they heard back then.
Yeah, true.
They don't care. Artists always want to do that. They go, oh, we can do that one so much better than I did it back in the day. For the Greatest Hits album, let's do a new version.
Right.
And everyone hears it and goes, ugh, you know, I don't care. I don't care that it's nominally better in some respects.
Right.
But I want the one that I heard when I was making out the back of the car or whatever. You know, I want the one that is that era.
Yeah.
You know, and I know I'm like that. If you buy, sometimes you buy an album of greatest hits and you find out they're like remakes. So now Jeff Lynne, on the other hand, you know, has redone all his hits. Exactly. They sound exactly like the originals.
Yeah.
Only better, cleaner, and they're great, you know. But when people think, oh, I can do a better arrangement or a better style of vocal or this, that, and the other, even if you think it's better, we're not going to, because we're in love with the one you did years ago.
It's so funny that you say that, because just recently I bought myself a turntable, and I have records, because I used to, when I go out on the road, I would go to like antique stores or whatever and collect comedy albums and regular records. I bought a Donovan one recently, and I'd seen it and it was whatever, and I love the song Catch the Wind.
Yeah.
And I'd had it on my phone for years or whatever, and when I played it on the album, same cover on my phone, completely different. And I was like, what is this? What have I done? And then the entire time I tried to spend figuring out whether I messed up and it's not the right out. Like, I was like, where did this come from? I can't find, to this day, I don't know.
Right.
But it is interesting that like my brain kind of instantly rejected the one that was probably correct the way they wanted.
Yes, exactly. Yes. No, and people redo it usually for purely materialistic reasons.
Yeah.
You know, because if you redo it, there's a period during which you cannot re-record your old songs, but once that period elapses, you can save a fortune by not having to pay the record label, not having to pay the rest of your band,
right,
and not having to pay the woman you were married to when you got the record.
Oh, that's great.
And there's half right there.
Yeah. Does the digital aspect of music today kind of bother you a little bit?
No, I love it.
No. Well, I mean, like in terms of like how I guess, you know, for a while certain I'm trying to think apps or whatever were removing like Michael Jackson, let's say, you know what I mean? Like they were like that stuff's gone. You can't listen to it anymore. Like I still buy music because I'm afraid someone's going to either tamper with it, you know, or remove it. Do you kind of miss like having something be tangible, or? Oh,
you mean, well,
like these different platforms that own the music, you know what I mean? Like they technically own the rights.
But you can still have access to it. I mean, you got access to it. I mean, access has never been better. You can listen to pretty much anything you want, anywhere you want, pretty much instantly, you know?
Yeah.
Does it hurt the artist, do you think, at all? Or do you think it's a win-win, kind of a different balance?
I think it's a win-win generally, but you don't make as much money. You know, the music business has changed drastically, and it's very hard to make what used to be considered rock star amounts of money. You know, I mean, if you're incredibly brilliant and incredibly huge, like Ed Sheeran or someone, you can still make a fortune. But generally, you know, it's funny thing is that rock stars become, as you know, a phrase now. You know, nothing. So, but the answer is now, if you're going to be a rock star, do not go into music. Become a tech guy. Invent an app. You know. Elon Musk is a rock star. Your average rock band leader is not.
Yeah. Right.
So,
that's so true.
It's all changed. But I think the fact that music is more important than ever, that people listen to more music than they ever did, partly because the access is so dramatically improved. You know, that we're just about at that point where if you say, I feel like hearing some music, how about so-and-so? You know, how about Catch the Wind? Luckily, I wasn't talking into anything relevant, or the music would already be pouring out, because if I'd had Siri or Alexa or any of those things working, we'd already be listening to Catch the Wind. And the point is, you don't even have to know where it's coming from. I wouldn't know if it's coming from you or you or me or my phone or my television or what the hell. But the good thing is you can listen to me. She shall have music wherever she goes, and that's important. That finally is almost achieved, and that's a very good thing.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Now, is anyone getting paid for that music? The answer is probably yes, but minimally.
Right.
Yeah.
And probably not the right people.
And probably, well, that might be the right people, but
Yeah.
well, that's a separate thing.
Right.
Songs, back in the old days, it never went to the right people. It always went to Morris Levy or somebody.
Yeah. Was
You
there
know.
ever like a gig that you had gotten like where you were like, I think I got stiffed. I don't know what happened back there.
Oh,
but
quite often, yeah. Oh, yeah. Back in the day, you'd play gigs and not get paid.
Oh my God.
Or, I mean, with in the American record business, it was more common that you didn't get paid by the label either. All those black R&B labels were famous for the
right.
Eventually, they'd buy you a Cadillac and pat you on the head. But that was it.
Great.
But people got ripped off mercilessly for their songs and their recordings. And not even just Motown, even labels like Atlantic, and all those labels dealing with black music. If they could get away with not paying you, they probably would.
Right.
Back in the day, because they'd grown up in a fairly freewheeling, to put it mildly, version of the music business where you made as much as you could and gave people as little as you could get away with.
Right.
I feel like that carried over pretty far in, right? Like into the
It did, but then gradually they'd all stop being bought up by big corporations.
Yeah.
Who actually were fairly honest. If they screwed you, they'd screw you honestly, going, you're not going to get paid much, but you're lucky to be on our label.
Wow.
Yeah.
But they did the actual old, when someone asks for royalties and you just hang them out of the window for a while and then send them away or whatever, all those things, which really did happen. Remember, I think it was one of the last ones, wasn't it? Vanilla Ice, who famously,
with Suge Knight.
Yep.
And they Suge Knight hung him out of the window.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's like, you don't want to get paid, do you? No. So that still exists, I'm sure, but I think generally the record business has become, it became very big business, and all the major labels now are owned by major corporations. So it's closer to being a straightforward business, I think, which is good and bad. You lose a lot of fantastically interesting characters,
Yeah.
but some of them are also evil, like Suge Knight was. So.
Yeah, that is. Whenever I watch one of those like documentaries on MTV and stuff like that, they always say, they always call them the cigar chomping guys. Right. Would be like, like they would give more people chances. They'd be like, yeah, whatever, throw it out there. If it sells, it sells. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
Right.
And like today, they're like afraid to take those kind of chances.
Yeah, and they do more surveys, and is it what people want and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, or they've got them on,
and that which is sometimes correct, but it also tends to eliminate the really outside stuff, which is what changes music.
Is there anybody that you're really fond of right now that you haven't gotten to work with yet that you'd like to?
Lots of people. There's some new people that I'm as a woman called Holly Humberstone. I'm very keen on. She's very good. I love Brandy Clark, who I think
me too. She's so
Brandy
great.
Carlisle I love too, but
yeah, Brandy Clark's great though.
Everyone knows about Brandy Carlisle, correct?
Yeah.
But not everyone knows about Brandy Clark.
Yeah, Brandy Clark's great though. Yeah.
Writer and singer. I'm a huge Ed Sheeran fan, but so is everybody else.
Yeah.
But I love great singer-songwriters, and I think he is unquestionably one of them. And also because he's a redhead, so we're in the same
you guys
same overall category.
And he's short too, I heard.
Yeah,
I think.
And wears glasses. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
True.
He's in the club.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I'm gonna go back just a little bit. What was it? Do you have any like road stories from being on the road with Gordon or the Beatles or any of those guys? Like anything bizarre that happened to you over the years?
Yes.
That you'd like to share? Yeah, I'm sure there are, but I'd like to,
No, I don't. I can't think of a specifically bizarre story. I mean, the weirdest part was the the whole British invasion thing in America. You know, when first came to America, you know, we dreamt of coming to America. You know, we idolized America. We loved American music. We loved everything about America. You know, in Britain, people forget, you know, in the 50s, it was still a black and white bomb site rationing. The last rationing in Britain was removed in 1956.
Wow.
So, you know, we came from another world and shortages of everything as a kid growing up. So America, you looked across, it was this land of plenty, with these crazy cars with big fins on them and giant refrigerators filled with exotic foods. Anyway, so we loved America and we loved the music. So when we first got to New York, it was a thrill. And then, of course, to be chased around New York by screaming girls trying to tear your clothes off is the only way to travel. I recommend it. So,
I've been doing it
what
wrong.
was weird is, you know, it's because of the Beatles, you know, as I say, they'd seen Hard Day's Night and they knew how they were supposed to react. So the screaming became a self-perpetuating phenomenon. And it was weird because if they'd catch up with you, they didn't know what to do. Nothing happened. It was all about the chase, you know, all about running around like in the movie. And they were crazed, you know, they were kind of a little bit out of their minds. I do remember one time we were doing an outdoor show and there were a couple like truck beds, I think the stage was on. It was all rather primitive then, facing one side of a stadium. And so there was seats. And the police continuously, with the Beatles and even with us and all the other acts, would underestimate the power of these girls, how crazy they would get. So they'd go, oh, we can handle anything, you know. And what happened? All the girls came running down onto the grass of the baseball pitch or whatever you call it. And they were running across to where we were on the stage. And suddenly cops were telling us, leave, run, go and get back in the cars. This is out of control. So we were running, and as I jumped off the truck bed that was the stage onto the grass, my glasses fell off, which had become somewhat sort of iconic. They were my Buddy Holly glasses, you know, the black glasses. They fell off on the ground. I picked them up and ran over and eventually got in the car. I looked back and this girl had caught up to where my glasses had landed on the grass and was pulling the grass up and eating it.
What?
And I went, that's cool.
Wow.
I was impressed.
Yeah.
And so I thought, oh yeah, that's, you know, of course it's magic grass, you know. It has been touched by greatness. But, but I confess, I was deep down mystified.
Wow.
And I kind of went, that's some really freaky scientific, you know, psychological phenomenon at work here. And if they did that to me, imagine if it was John Lennon's glasses who'd fall on the grass. They'd have had to go and get a backhoe and take out a whole chunk of, you know.
I wonder if those people remember doing that. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I've told the story before. I've never had anyone, you know, immediately email me going, I was the girl who had the grass that your glasses fell on.
We're going to find her for you. And we're
All
going
right. Tell her I was very impressed and I hope she's recovered.
Oh my God. Well, I can't believe the hours basically, you know, blown by. I've got a couple more questions for you. One of them, we've asked every guest this, and I'd love to get to ask you this too.
Okay.
If you had the opportunity to go back in time and speak to your younger self and give yourself a piece of advice that would kind of help you out today, do you know what it would be?
Actually, not really, because I don't think so. Because I've actually been very lucky. I mean, I think if I followed any kind of overall principle, it's to take every opportunity that's come my way. I've not hesitated, you know. So I was a child actor because the opportunity came my way, and that's a whole other story. You know, then I took school seriously for a bit, but then when it was on, I was at university when suddenly we got offered a record deal, made a record, went to #1, you know. So I was in the middle of my second year as a philosophy student at London University.
Wow.
And I jumped at the opportunity to go to America, quit school, and, you know, so I think I've always tended towards taking the slightly more radical. When I found James, you know, when I first heard James Taylor, I totally bet my career on his. Moved to America without hesitation. So I think overall, I've been quite lucky in the sense that I've gone, oh, look, I can do this, boom, and done it, you know?
Yeah.
And I think generally people regret the things they don't do more than the things they do.
Wow.
And so I don't, I think my advice for my younger self will be, maybe I did give myself this advice. Maybe some time warp.
Yeah.
Maybe I went back and said to the young Peter Asher, look, anything that comes your way, grab it, do it. Because that seems to be the advice I have followed.
That's beautiful. I love the multiverse theme you got going on there too. That's
There you
nice.
go. Exactly.
Just found the wormwormhole.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. He sent
Yeah.
himself this clip, and he's like, "Yeah, some really hairy dude from New Jersey."
Exactly. And so I reached
That's
the peak of my career, which is, of course, doing this show.
You know, I'm only going to cut out that clip, right?
Yeah, quite so.
It'll be plastered
Exactly.
everywhere.
Right.
Well, listen. So I'm going to just let everybody know where you're going to be. You've got a lot of gigs coming up.
Please do, yes.
You're going to be at the Count Basie on September 17th. You're going to be at the Kirby Center in Wilkes-Barre, PA on the 18th. You're also going to be at the Iron Horse Music Hall in Northampton, Massachusetts on the 19th. Oh my God, wait, go back on the 16th. Sorry, you're going to be in Westerly, Rhode Island.
I think that's the first one. Yeah.
That's the first one. Yeah. Westerly, Rhode Island is the first one. They sent me this out of order.
I should know them in my head. Sorry.
No, it's fine.
This is my memoir show where I do it with a bunch of video clips and a band, and so we do songs and stories and so on.
Yes, and you'll be ending it on 9/20 in Boston.
And at the City Winery in Boston, which is
City
a cool
Winery.
place to play. Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be a blast. I wish I could go to that one too. I love Boston.
Well, I look forward to seeing you at whatever gig you make it to.
Yeah, thank you, dude. I can't wait. Thank you so much for coming on, for doing this. It was an absolute pleasure to talk to you, really. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Dystopia tonight.